Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm emotional. Dear Mayor, dear Dominic, dear Minister, dear fellow members of the European Parliament, Vice President of the European Parliament, dear ambassadors, distinguished guests, dear Europeans, Bună ziua, Timișoara. No, Dominic spoke in my native language, so I have to up my game a little bit. I'll start by saying what a pleasure it is to be back in Romania, and I'm so delighted to be here in Timișoara, a city that shaped not only Romania's story, but Europe's too. Last week, we saw Europe on the streets of Timișoara and Bucharest. People wrapped in European flags, chanting and celebrating Romania's place at the heart of our union. Yesterday, this morning, in Bucharest, I had the pleasure of meeting with President-elect Dan, and I congratulated him on his election victory. I know that he shares the belief that Europe is more than just geography. Like those on the streets last week, and all of us here today, we know Europe is a home of shared values, a choice, a belief in freedom, in dignity, in justice. It is something that we live and breathe, not something we inherit, a promise that we pass forward, a project that we build together every single day. Europe was forged by people who refused to accept the status quo, who dared to believe in something better, people who chose hope over fear, unity over division, possibility over pessimism. Few cities embody that European spirit more than Timișoara. A city of pioneers, of courage, of hope, a city that started the revolution of 1989, a city that knows the cost of freedom and the power of new beginnings. This is why I am deeply honored that the city of Timișoara has awarded the European Parliament this recognition for European values. I would like to thank the people of Timișoara, and especially your mayor, Dominic Fritz. Dear Dominic, I don't think you would have left my office in 2022 without me promising you that I would come to Timișoara. So here I am, otherwise you'd still be there, I have no doubt. And I'd like to tell you, dear friends, that you have a mayor who has amazing leadership, exceptional vision, and one of the strongest commitments to Europe I've ever seen. Congratulations. Thank you for making Europe local. And let me also pay tribute to this year's distinguished jury in this regard, who reflect the richness, the wealth of Romania's civic, political and cultural life. This award belongs to you. I accept this honor on behalf of the European Parliament, of my fellow members and all those working every day to defend the values that unite us as Europeans, because this award is more than a recognition, it is a responsibility. A reminder that Europe and the values that we stand for can never be guaranteed, that they must be defended every day. Now, the European Union is not perfect. It is and will always be a work in progress. But our journey from conflict to cooperation, from borders to bridges, from 6 countries to 27, remains the greatest political experiment in modern history. And here, in Romania, 18 years after membership, you know what Europe can do, how it transforms lives, how it creates opportunity, how it protects freedom. You have lived it, and you believe in it. But that belief must never be taken for granted. Too many in Europe still feel left behind, struggling to make ends meet, worrying they'll never afford a home, living in search of work and opportunity, weighed down by bureaucracy and costs. That is why we must listen, and that is why we must do so much more. When Europeans voted last June for the European Parliament, they sent a clear message about the kind of Europe that they want. That message echoed here again in Romania last Sunday. People are asking for results. They want a Europe that works. They want a Europe that makes life simpler, not harder. A Europe that leads on good jobs, on better opportunities, at a fair chance everywhere, at building a future. A Europe that protects its borders, its values, its people. A Europe that fulfills the promise of its flag. That is not too much to ask, and it cannot be too much to deliver. So the responsibility now falls to us to build that smarter, stronger, safer Europe, to prove that Europe can deliver, to show that Europe can reconnect with citizens, to show that Europe is not just about capital cities. A smarter Europe, yeah, that's Dominic. When we say a smarter Europe, it's one where innovation thrives, where universities like yours here in Timișoara drive progress. Today there was a competition between the students as to who came from the best school, and they were all very objective in claiming that theirs was. But this is a city where startups can scale, not stumble. And Europe that understands, even here, that more regulation doesn't always mean better regulation. A Europe that invests in clean technologies without turning its back on our farmers and our industries. A stronger Europe is one that knows that alone we are small, but together we are powerful. Where we commit to finishing what we started, like completing the Capital Markets Union, deepening our single market. A Europe that doesn't follow, but leads in AI, in digital, in quantum. A Europe that stands tall, especially in the most uncertain of times. A safer Europe is one that takes its own destiny in its own hands. Russia's war in Ukraine changed everything. Every member state in Europe now understands that we can no longer rely on others for our security. We must take that responsibility seriously if we are to push for a real and lasting peace on the basis of nothing about Ukraine without Ukraine. A safer Europe also means getting serious about enlargement. Moldova and Ukraine must continue their path towards membership, and the Western Balkans cannot be left waiting another decade. If we have learned something from each enlargement phase of the European Union ever since its conception, is that if we don't step up, others will step in. Romania waited more than a decade to join the Schengen area. I lose count of how many times I stood up, sometimes as the only one around the table, and say, remember, when you take your decisions, that Romania and Bulgaria are not yet in the Schengen area, and that is unfair. It took long, but you managed. You managed. Finally, too late, but you managed. And we in the European Parliament, across the board, all political groups got together and said, this is something we need to remind every week, month, every time we have the opportunity. Because we knew, as directly elected representatives, that if we didn't do it, then others might not. And it is a responsibility we took extremely seriously, and it's also a responsibility we take for enlargement with regards to Ukraine and Moldova. And here, I want to say thank you to the Romanian people for your support, to Ukrainians and to Moldovans living under the constant threat of Russia. You understand better than anyone why this matters for all of us. Now, Europe has always been built by people who believed that tomorrow could be better than today. And I know that belief is still alive in every young person looking for their first job, in every entrepreneur with an idea, starting something new, in every family, and parents hoping their children will live better lives. Now, our job, collectively, but this is my responsibility as I graciously accept this award, is to match that belief with action, to show that Europe still works, that it still listens, that it delivers, and that is why I'm here in Timișoara today. With this award, we at the European Parliament renew our promise to defend the values that brought us together, to fight for the future that you and your children deserve, and to build a Europe that doesn't just endure, but inspires. Timișoara, îți mulțumesc pentru această onoare.